And that's the closing gong live from the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, signaling the end of today's business on the floor. Hello and welcome to your show. It's Business Nigeria. In the news today, Nigerians can now track the country's financial activities as President Buhari directs ministries, departments and agencies to publish their financial reports daily. Also in the news now, Moody's Ratings changes 2020 outlook for African banks to negative from stable. On the international front, China's consumer inflation climbs to nearly 8-year high in the month of November. On the show today, we'll also be focusing on how the capital market can be used for infrastructure financing and also take a look at the power sector, where reforms are expected 6 years after privatization. Welcome. And starting off the show today, we have reports that President Muhammadu Buhari has nominated Edward Lamitek Adamu as the new chairman of the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. In a letter to the Senate today, President Buhari seeks the confirmation of Adamu to replace the outgoing chairman, Muiz Banire. Well, on the news as well, Moody's Ratings has changed its 2020 outlook for African banks from stable to negative. The ratings agency states that global economy remains sluggish with negative business sentiment and trade uncertainties on growth prospects. In Africa, the government debt is also high and GDP growth will remain below potential and not enough to boost per capita income levels. According to the senior vice president of Moody's, Konstantinos Kyprios, weakening operating conditions are pressuring governments' credit quality, which leads to a knock-on effect on banks through reduced business generation, slower credit growth and rising assets risk. The ratings agency says banks in South Africa, Nigeria, Tunisia and Angola will face the greatest challenges, while Egypt, Morocco, Mauritius and Kenya banks, will be resilient. Let's now shift focus a little bit. Nigerians can now track the country's financial activities daily. This comes as President Muhammadu Buhari gives the directive the launch of financial transparency policy and implementation guidelines in Abuja. The order states that all ministries, departments and agencies are to publish the details of their financial inflows and outflows every day. With these directives, the Treasury will publish payments of at least 10 million naira, while all ministries, departments and agencies must publish payments above 5 million naira made out of all public funds under their purview within 7 days after the end of the month. The Accountant General of the Federation is to publish quarterly financial statements for the government and for individuals within a month after the end of the quarter. Mentoring ensures that knowledge, experience and hard-won insight transfers from one person to another. While your own great ideas are essential to your business, with an experienced mentor at your side, you have one of the most powerful assets any business person can ever have. Someone that's interested and invested in you and your success. Those are the words of keynote speakers at an entrepreneurship summit in Lagos, speaking on the need to groom young minds to help them thrive and drive the economy through their business prospects. Well, we have details now. Young entrepreneurs from over 16 cities across different sectors of Nigeria's economy, such as agriculture, ICT and manufacturing, gather here at this conference, which places a premium on mentorship for budding minds at entry levels to those trying to scale up their businesses. The role of entrepreneurs remains undeniable to any economy's growth, and Nigeria is no exception. Hence, the need to tap into this resource through value addition.
Unlimited possibilities. When you look around us in our society, there's the opportunity to add value for the young entrepreneurs, not to be discouraged, to stay focused on the results that they are trying to achieve, to think of adding value to society, and if they remain focused and add value, success will come.
Despite the odds of the environment, there's so many entrepreneurs willing to take the odds. Quite a lot of entrepreneurs work across different sectors, all the sectors of the economy, producing products and services, and also building businesses which generate employment and all of that. So when you see those type of examples, that inspires us to help to support them, particularly supporting those that have the potential to really build scalable businesses.
One of the major highlights is the need for an impact report as a follow-up to assessing growth within mentorship programs.
A lot of times entrepreneurs usually come and they have amazing ideas of products or services. But what's also important is that how do you help them build businesses? And what we want to showcase in our impact report is that with knowledge, with support, with business support services, linking people to mentorship, information, linking people to funding, or linking people to opportunities to access markets, they really can take something small and grow large with them.
Still somewhat of a novelty, mentors are also tasked to do more by being intentional with analyzing growth prospects.
I think the major challenge is direction. A lot of young entrepreneurs need direction, whether it's mentoring, whether it's teaching them, but direction. Because even when you're done with the class, the moment your session ends, that's when they start coming to you to ask you personal questions. If you don't address those questions, then you're not giving value. That's where you're addressing their pain point. So it's one word. It takes a whole lot to commit that time because it's volunteering. But then I've learned a lot from it, engaging them, interacting with them, even improving on my own. So while you are facilitating, teaching them, guiding them, you're also learning some insights.
The consensus remains that the narrative of most businesses failing before marking the 5-year benchmark must change. This can only happen with greater ease of doing business and other interventions to sustain SMEs. And our efforts are on course to improve the country's power sector through effective metering that will meet consumers' demands and also address liquidity challenges that, according to the Minister of Power, Saleh Maman, during a facility inspection in Ogun State, insists effective metering of electricity consumers remains the best option to help consumers get value for money and also assist distribution companies get money to pay generation companies. According to the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, electricity customer population stands at 7.48 million. Only 3.39 million of this, which forms about 45.3%, are identified customers who are metered. This leaves the unmetered population currently at about 4.09 million. As part of efforts to bridge this gap, the Minister of Power and his team visit Moma's Electricity Meters Manufacturing Company factory in Ogun State to inspect the capacity of the facility and production process of meters to meet the current deficit.
This inspection now that I have done and is now encouraging me to also tell Nigerians that we have people who can do the metering contract too. And you know, we have to allow this meter to come. We have to also allow investors to come in and invest. So, and we have to give consideration also to Nigerian manufacturers. That is why I'm here.
Talks through the need to undertake voltage profiling and standardization is top on the agenda.
After calibration to all the IEC standard and Nigerian metering code standard, it further goes into NEMSA, where they do outside certification and give us the necessary sticker to tell us that the meter we have designed in Nigeria has complied with Nigerian metering standard. We specifically tailor our made in Nigeria meter to address all the voltage fluctuation in concurrent of the electricity quality that normally happens that makes appliances in the house to damage.
With the capacity to produce above 50,000 smart meters per month, the government is called upon to do more to increase patronage of local content by upscaling the 30% Local Content Act on metering to 70% to give local meter manufacturers opportunities to attract investors.
What we will need for them is to be able to enforce the local content, to ensure that Nigerians buy made in Nigeria meters. We have sufficient and we have capability to improve on the number of hours we run. We can run 3 shifts to be able to double our capacity. So we have the competence, we have the capability, and we have the capacity to address all the metering gap in Nigeria.
Just last week, the Federal Ministry of Power announced it is set to effect the new electricity distribution policy called Willing Seller, Willing Buyer. This means electricity would be wheeled directly from the generation companies to willing consumers who are ready to fully settle their bills. And joining me now live in our Lagos studio to discuss much more on this and a whole lot more is energy expert Tolu Aderemi. Good to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you listen to that report, and the crux of the matter is patronage of local content. We have the capacity to produce meters locally. You look at countries like India, you could walk into a shop and get a meter. But we have unnecessary bottlenecks here in Nigeria, from the acquisition to even the process of getting it mounted in your apartment. What do you make of all of these processes?
Well, I think the simple answer is, and is a commendation to the regulator, the introduction of the meter asset provider policy. What that has done is it has created almost a third market participant other than your distribution company or the existing meter suppliers. So what is done is, as a consumer, I can walk directly to a map and purchase meters directly. Now, the regulation is also very stringent. Once I make my payment, in a period of 10 days, the meters must be installed in my premises. It doesn't stop there. It goes further to say that if the meter is damaged, and it has to do with revenue loss issues, the map must, within 2 days, of course, we lawyers, because I advise a lot in that area, have now recharacterized that area to say, look, from 2 days from when the damage was discovered, the map must reinstall the meter. Now, does it have its own problems? Oh, yes, it does. But what I can say to you before I go to what the problems are is that between when the map policy started and now, I can say clearly that quite a number of unmetered customers has been metered. So the 4.2 million figure that you have will substantially, have reduced from what it used to be.
But you have to understand that we have a population growth that also moves quite fast, urbanization and a whole lot more. So the reality is that that gap still widens.
That is correct, but you must also realize that the MAP policy is almost an emergency stopgap. What you find before now is a situation where the discos thrived in what is called the, I can't remember what it's called now, but providing or charging you on an assessment that they solely determine. I'll remember that name now. Now, coming to MAP, the MAPs go to source for funding. So government doesn't give them funds. And I source for the funding. I also go look for partners who supply me the SKDs and the CKDs.
Exactly.
Now, these contracts I tie down for about a period of a year. And then my partners in China have also insisted I must guarantee a minimum unit of supply. Now, putting all of this together, I must be guaranteed my returns. So the regulators have given us two options. The first option is you can walk up to me and pay me your 35,000 naira or 65,000 naira, and I install for you immediately. But not a lot of people can still afford that, interestingly. So you also have the financing option. Now, the financing option brings in the banks into this mix. Now, the banks have come to say to me, look, by regulation 12 of the regulation, the meter until full amortization belongs to the MAP. So I really can't take that meter as a security for the funds I'm going to be releasing to this customer. How then am I protected? So what did we do as MAP advisors? We approached the discos to say, look, let's form a tripartite relationship such that the law by section 69, I think, of the EPSRA donates the ownership of that asset ultimately to the distribution company. Until amortization, it rests with me, the disco. The man who is financing it has no security. So if the customer doesn't pay the charges for usage, how do I secure that man? So our proposal was, let us decommission the meters so that we can reinstall and then sell to somebody else. But we've not received the cooperation really
from government,
from the discos.
Oh.
So it's really not so much of, government is trying, I must say. I mean, if you look at the regulation, it's a robust regulation. It has its own little challenges here and there. But the cooperation we really need, or that should be birthed, should be that of the disco, the MAPs, and the banks. That is the only way you can guarantee confidence and return on investment.
A proper financing model
Absolutely.
that would ensure that both parties make their businesses work.
That's correct.
Okay, now let's talk about voltage profiling, standardization, and a whole lot more. You saw the assembling of some of those meters there, and so many will question, well, is this going to work properly here? And knowing our peculiarities here and there are so many fears. Yes, we understand we're supposed to patronize made in Nigeria goods and all of those, but we still have these fears that so far as it's made by independent entities or bodies, it would not meet up to standard.
Well, I think the truth of the matter is, and you know, like I said, I advise one of the biggest metering companies in Nigeria. What they do have, and the company which you heard a few minutes ago, is that what they have are manufacturing plants. But largely, you also see that what they do is a assembly of those meters. I mean, they're called semi-knockdown parts, SKDs, and in some cases CKDs, completely knockdown parts. The quality of those knockdown parts are things that are tested at a place where we call the MTS.
But we have a trust deficit, so it's just thrown at the back of our heads like...
Well, until you start using, until you start using, I mean, I use my client's meter, for example, and I say to you that I've never had any issue with that. And even if you do have an issue with it, the response time is always very impressive. And the reason is because there's now a commercial sense that has been injected into the process. So even the discos know that if I'm not smart and quick and prompt about this, then I'm likely to lose revenue.
Okay,
same thing with the map.
Let's talk a little bit more on realistic terms now, how this should make meaning to the man on the street. You look at this company now having the capacity to produce no less than 50,000 meters per month. And to bridge the gap, then we would ask ourselves, why not we see the partnership between government and these entities and have everybody has meters? Because we look at estimated billing, it's still a very harsh reality. Nigerians are still being exploited at various levels within the power sector. And so many people are also saying, look at 6 years after privatization, and we are still where we started off.
All right. I think this will take us a bit back history lane, and we'll go back to 2013. The question is, why did we go for privatization in the first place? Or why do people privatize?
We are looking for reforms to get the power sector much more...
That's one way to look at it. The other way is that I'm government, I can't handle this. So I need the private sector to come and inject funds into it. Obasanjo did it in 1993 when he brought the IOCs to come and develop his deep water assets and also invest in his onshore assets. What government needed to do was to give confidence to the investors, which was what Jonathan's government did in 2013. It brought in private investors. Now, I won't go into the politics of who got what, but the truth of the matter, and I've always maintained it, that is a sanctionable issue. All the DISCOs and all the GENCOs who took the award of the licenses at the time must be held responsible. Now, does that absolve government from all this mess? No, it doesn't. But the first place to look at is, what have the DISCOs, what have they done with these licenses in a space of 6 years? Many things should have happened. We should have moved to transition electricity market. We haven't done so. How much of MITO has been triggered? Not a lot. So really, the DISCOs will be arguing with you that, look, it is not cost reflective. Government, on the other hand, will tell you, but you have not met the terms of the agreement. So, for example, you were to reduce your ATC and sale losses by 25% in your first or 2-3 years of assumption of this. You haven't done that. That is a reason alone for me to revoke the license. Now, do we carry on this way? No, we shouldn't, because if we revoke the license, the question you want to ask is, who will buy that license?
Okay, so let me ask you now, you made mention of cost-reflective tariffs. Now, how do we have this working? You see, government also came last week again saying that, well, with the willing seller, willing buyer initiative as well, we'll have a much more transparent system. How do you think we would be able to get to that part where we have people paying for exactly what they consume, and then we have enough of power supply? We don't have the DISCOs not necessarily selling to people because people are not also paying them, and then the generation companies are also being owed.
I will say two things. The first is government must look inwards. For you to make that sort of statement, I think it's a sweeping statement. If you go and look at the legacy debts of the distribution companies, you will find out that most of the debts are from the MDAs, and in some cases the military. Now, drill down to the budgets of these MDAs and ask yourself whether you will find a component anywhere there which shows service of electricity debts. So what it means is that a ministry, a certain ministry, for example, we're going into 2020 without a budget to service those debts. So that means the distribution companies are going to also leave next year without servicing of those debts.
Okay, Tolu, for the lack of time now, let me just butt in here. One last question. In a sum, what is your expectation from the new Minister of Power going into 2020? What aggressive reforms do you expect so that we can see a power sector that delivers? Just in a sum, 1 minute.
Well, I think what we should look at is the licenses given to the distribution companies. Those franchise areas are areas they really cannot handle. We should take a cue from paragraph 12 of the first schedule of the Petroleum Act and carve out some part of the franchise areas after a period of time and let other eligible investors also play in that space.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Tolu Aderemi, energy expert.
Thank
Good
you
to have
very
you on
much.
the show. Well, it's about that time where we cross over to the trading floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange as we meet up with market editor Effiong Ekop, bringing us live updates from the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Good to see you once again, Ekop. What's the latest now?
Well, David, Big Cap Securities crashed their prices on the trading floor of the stock exchange this afternoon. The likes of MTN, Dangote Cement, GT Bank, Unilever, they were all down on the back of investors' interest and desire to sell off securities for cash during this particular time. And so all these big companies that actually drive activities on the trading floor of the exchange, they now piloted negative transactions on the floor. Indeed, the index performed woefully. It was down 1.11% this afternoon. And that tells you how deep the price crash was. And the indication is that investors indeed are losing huge funds in their portfolios. David?
Thank you very much for the updates there. It's good to have all of those details there from the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We've been speaking with market editor Effiong Ekop. Well, that's it. It's the show for today. Make sure you join me tomorrow. We also have much more details. It's the midweek and it's a whole lot more in store.